Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Nun Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top at the new Mishnah. Our Mishnah continues to discuss the Isser, the prohibition of Mimtzo Chefzecha. The Navi says a person should desist and be prevented from doing weekday activity, including things of Mekach or Memkar. We learned previously reading shtaros that have to do with Mekach or Memkar and the widened gezerah of shtaros hedyotis that a person should not come to read those documents that have to do with Mekach or Memkar. Says the Mishnah, Lo yiskar adam payalim b'Shabbos, a person shall not hire workers on Shabbos, again, because that's a form of Mekach or Memkar, and it'd be over the Isser Memtzo Chefzecha. V'lo yoymar adam lachaveiro liskor lo payalim, and he shall not then tell a friend to hire workers. And this needs an explanation because we just mentioned that he cannot do that himself. So then why can he then go ahead and tell somebody else? Certainly not also. So the Gemara will have to explain. The Mishnah goes on to say, Ein machshichin al hatchum liskor loy payalim ulahavi peiros. A person cannot go to the tchum. Here we know that the city limits have 2,000 amos beyond it, called the tchum, and the person is not allowed to then go to the end of that boundary, to the tchum, and wait there until after Shabbos for his weekday activity, in this case, in order to then hire workers, or to then bring fruit that is still connected to the ground, whereby he'd have to then ultimately harvest it and then bring it. That would be an Isser on Shabbos. He can't go ahead and be machshich ala tchum for that either. The Mishnah goes on to say, Aval machshichu lishmor umevi peiros biyado. But what he could do is he can go ahead and wait at the end of the tchum until the end of Shabbos for a permissible activity that he can do on Shabbos. For example, to be shomer peiros. Since being shomer peiros is not an Isser on Shabbos, therefore it's not considered to be a weekday activity, whereby he's not going to be over Mimtzo Chefzecha, and he can do that, go ahead and do that on Shabbos as well, by being machshich ala tchum, as well as then for somebody to bring peiros. Klal Omar Abba Shol, the Mishnah concludes with the klal, the principle that Abba Shol stated. Kol she'ani zakai ba'amirosoi, rashai ani lahachshich alov. Whatever I am able to then say to somebody else, then I am also permitted to then be machshich ala tchum, to wait by the tchum until the end of Shabbos as well. Ask the Gemara right away, maishnahu umaishna chaver. If we stated already in the beginning of the Mishnah that one cannot go ahead and machshich tchum, if before machshich tchum he's not able to be maskir payalim himself, so then why does the Mishnah state afterwards he cannot tell his friend to be machshich payal, to be maskir payalim? If he can't be maskir payalim, he can't tell his friend to do so. Answers the Gemara Marab Papa, chaver nochri. We're talking about a Gentile. He cannot tell a Gentile to go ahead and be maskir payalim. Since a Gentile, you might think, doesn't have Shabbos, whereby, so therefore, you cannot hire workers, but he could go ahead and hire workers. Ask the Gemara, but still, maski flo Rav Ashi amira lenochri shvus. But amira lenochri, telling a Gentile to do a malacha, is an isser dirabanan of amira la'akum. So that's also prohibited. So why would we think that a person can tell some Gentile to then hire workers? Why do we need the Mishnah to tell us otherwise? We know you cannot do that. Elam Rav Ashi afilu tema chaveiro Yisrael. No, we're talking about where he talks about telling a fellow Jew that he cannot go ahead and hire workers. So what's the Mishnah coming to teach us? Hakamash malon lo yoymar adam lachaveiro schor li payalim. You cannot tell your friend to then go ahead and hire workers. Aval, but what you could do, you can say to them, Adam l'chaver hanidra sheta'amod imi lo erev. You can say to your friend, let us see whether you'll stand with me in the evening. In other words, he's being merames, he's hinting to him that he's going to hire him, and they both know, he, as well as the one who's coming to speak to ultimately hire, he also knows that he's saying this to hire him. But since he's not explicitly stating so, it's permissible. And that's what the That's what the Mishnah is coming to say over here, that you're not allowed to say explicitly to hire workers, but you could say to them in a remez form that to stand with me, implying that he will be hired as a worker after Shabbos. Umas Nisim Mani asked the Gemara, who is the author of our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Ki Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha. The Tanya, Lo Yoyimar Adam Lachaveiro Haniro Shetamod Imi Lo Erev. The Tana Kama says you cannot say that to somebody else and tell him, stand with me and let us see whether you will then go ahead and be with me in the evening, referring to being a hired worker. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha Oimer Adam Lachaveiro Haniro Shetamod Imi Lo Erev. But he does say, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha, that you could imply to him that you are going to stand with me, meaning I'm hiring you now for after Shabbos. Omar Rabbi Barchan, Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. And the halacha taka is like Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, that one can do this explicit, as long as it isn't explicitly stated, he can go ahead and meramez, is not considered to be a transgression of mimtzoi cheftzecha. V'omar Rabbi Barchan, Omar Rabbi Yochanan. My time of Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha. What is the reason why this is permissible? Dirshu, it says mimtzoi cheftzecha v'daber davar. After it says mimtzoi cheftzecha, you're prevented from then doing your own things that are weekday activity. It states v'daber davar, implying dibur osur, hiur muter. When is it mimtzoi cheftzecha, your weekday activity, going to be prohibited? When it's going to be stated explicitly. But if it's only with thought, then it's going to be permissible. Says Gemara Vayter Rami le Rab Acha Barav Huna Lerava. He asked me, Omar Rabbi Yochanan Dibur Osir Hihur Mutter. Does Rabbi Yochanan indeed hold that Dibur is Osir but Hihur is Mutter? Alma Hihur Lav Kedibur Dami. That implies that Rabbi Yochanan holds that Hihur is not like Dibur, and that's why Hihur is Mutter and Dibur is Osir. Asks the Gemara, "V'Omar Rabbi Bar Barchanam Rabbi Yochanan bekol makom muter li hiur chutz mi beis hamerchas beis hakisei." But Rabbi Yochanan says you can go ahead and mihar wherever you would like, with the exception of a bathroom, a beis hakisei, and a beis hamerchas. So that implies that indeed hiur is kit dibur dami, and that's why it's prohibited in these places where it's not clean. Answers the Gemara, shiny hasom. The Beis HaMerchatz and the Beis HaKisai are different. The Ba'in v'hoya machanecha kodosh, because in those places it requires it to be kodosh. As the pasuk says, your camps shall be holy, and therefore in these places it's prohibited to even think divrei Torah, divrei kedusha. Veleka, you wouldn't have that in a Beis HaMerchatz, a Beis HaKisai, and therefore you're not allowed to think about even divrei kedusha. Hochanami Ksiv asked the Gemara still, but it's written, V'lo yireh becho ervas dovar, that it should not be seen in you an ervas dovar, which implies that there's a dibur over here in these places, and that's why it's prohibited. And thereby the Gemara is persisting and saying that Rabbi Yochanan must hold that hihur is kedibur dam, because he says you cannot even be mahahir in a beis hakisei, beis hamerchatz. Answers the Gemara, no, that pasuk of lo yer b'chol davar hahomi boy like Rav Yehuda, we need it like what Rav Yehuda teaches us for. The Omar Rav Yehuda mar akum orum also likros kriya shema kenegdo. He says that a Gentile who is naked, you can't say kriya shema, and truth is you can't say any divrei kedusha opposite his erva. My area asked the Gemara, so therefore we see over here that ervas dovar is not coming to say anything about the dibur, but rather is coming to tell us about another halacha. But in regards to the Beis HaMerchatz and the Beis HaKisei, there Rabbi Yochanan was saying you cannot go ahead and mahar there because have a machanecha kodesh. It has to be a holy encampment. Ask the Gemara, my area akum afili yisrael nami. Why does it state over here that you cannot say Kriya Shema or any other divrei kedusha opposite a Gentile that's naked? What's unique about a Gentile that's naked? Even a Yisrael who's naked, you wouldn't be able to say. Answers Gemara, lo mi boy, it's coming to teach us a chiddush. Lo mi boy Yisrael da osir aval akum kivan dechsi be asher besar chamorim besorom eimer shapir dami. I might think that, of course, a Yisrael it's prohibited to then say keneged his erva. But keneged the erva of a akum, I would think that's permissible because after all the pasuk says asher besar chamorim besaram, and therefore their erva is not considered to be an erva. Komash malan is prohibited to say divrei kedusha even opposite the erva of a Gentile. Ask the Gemara ema hochinami. Why don't we then indeed say this is so, that you cannot, that indeed their erva is not the erva that is prohibited to say divrei kedusha opposite, because of the pasuk as we quoted asher besar chamorim besaram. Omar kro, because the pasuk says ve'ervas avihem loro. In regards to the bnei Noach, there it states that the erva of their father, of Noach, they did not see. So we see that Noach's erva is called an erva, thereby the halacha is such that one cannot say divrei kedusha keneged the erva of an akum. Ask the Gemara now that we said that one is prohibited from saying dibur on Shabbos. Ask the Gemara, dibur mi asir? Is dibur indeed prohibited? V'ho, we have many cases where a person can, yes, say dibur on Shabbos. V'ho Rav Chizda, Rav Hamnuna Damei Travayu, cheshbonos shel mitzvah muter l'chashbin b'Shabbos. You can make cheshbonos on Shabbos, different calculations, even though it's Shabbos. V'om Rabbi Elazar poiskim tzedakah la'aniyim b'Shabbos. You can apportion different amounts of money to tzedakah causes on Shabbos. You can also take into account the affairs of the rabbim on Shabbos with your dibur. You can go to the shuls in order to then take care of also the communal affairs on Shabbos, and that's with dibur. You can get all these places like the theaters and amphitheaters, all in order to then deal with the tzarchei, the iskei rabbim on Shabbos with your dibur. It was taught by the Tan of the Beis Medrash of Menashe that you can make shiduchim as well on Shabbos. You can also hire a teacher to teach your son Torah, or an umnus, a craft, a trade, also on Shabbos. So how come we're saying that dibur is also, we see all of these things, that the dibur we see is mutter? Explains the Gemara the following chiluk. Omar kro mimtzoi chefzecho v'daber dovar. When is it prohibited mimtzo chefzecha? V'daber dover chefzecha asurim chefze shomayim mutorin. When it's your own chafotzim, that means your own personal affairs, that means weekday activity, weekday affairs, that's when it is prohibited. But if it's chefze shomayim, when it comes to the words of mitzvah, that's already chefze shomayim, and that, with all these examples that we just listed here, is mutter.